Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's kick off today's video with a wild retail story that proves sometimes the sketchiest person isn't the angry customer at the counter, it's the so-called manager in training lurking in the office. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Manager in training wanted my boss's job, and her shrink ended up in cuffs. Way back in 2000, I was an adorable, naive 19-year-old working retail at a picture framing place. The management of our little shop consisted of our manager, Jenny, the assistant manager, Nick, and me, the third key. For those who don't know, a third key is literally that, a third person with keys. I had the ability to open and close the store and act as manager on duty, but if Jenny or Nick was there, then I was just a regular employee. Names changed to protect the not-so-innocent. Jenny was an amazing manager, middle-aged, but cool. She'd had a lot of fun in the 70s and wasn't shy about telling us her hilarious stories. She was also kind of like the shop mom. She made cookies and was always very in tune with people's emotions. She always knew the right thing to say to make me feel better, and she was a fountain of real-world wisdom. Everybody loved her. She was also an artist, and her work was starting to pick up steam. That, combined with the onset of some health issues, made her decide that retail work just wasn't for her anymore. We were all really sad, but definitely understood. Now Nick was just a college kid and definitely didn't want or really qualify to be promoted to manager, so corporate brought in a manager in training to work as a fourth member of the management. Let's call him Steve. Steve was weird. He was a huge white guy, but dressed in clothes that looked like they'd come from Bill Cosby's wardrobe. Loud sweaters and Arizona heat. I was basically a golden retriever puppy and tried to chat with him while teaching him the ropes when it was my turn to have him shadow me, but he just wouldn't engage. It's not just that, but he would stare at me while I worked, just sit in the office chair and stare. I tried to chalk it up to him just being awkward, but it was creepy. Even when I was trying to teach him something, he would barely interact. When he did talk, it was usually about how amazing he was at his last job and how low the pay was for managers in our company. It's retail. Okay, so on to the meat of the story. Remember when I said that Jenny was having issues with her health? She called me one Saturday afternoon when I was off and asked if I'd come fill in for her. Of course I did, and ran down to the shop to relieve her. She was having a really bad day, and I was happy to close for her. I also worked the next day, Sunday, and the day after that, Monday. That Monday, our district manager came in while I was MOD, and we got chatting. Like I said, I was basically a chatterbox, so this wasn't unusual. He asked me how Steve was doing, and I tried to diplomatically tell the guy Steve was a dud, using the example that on Saturday when I relieved Jenny, he just sat in the office or wandered the floor the whole night. The DM seemed a little startled, but not about the guy's behavior, but by the fact that Jenny hadn't been in the store after 3 p.m. After being in our store for about 6 weeks, Steve started swapping out with another store in the neighboring city and acting as MOD by himself. Steve was thrilled because he actually lived in this other city, and the rest of us just assumed this was part of his training. Not so much. Turns out that there'd been a whole lot of shrink happening at our store, a huge uptick in people paying with credit card and then coming back later and getting a cash refund. Back then, if you did a return on a credit card or debit, it took a few days for the money to show back up in the account. If people got mean about it, we could do a cash refund, but it had to be approved by a member of the management by signing in with their register code and using their key. Thousands of dollars worth of returns were being done in cash multiple times a day, when before we'd have maybe 1 or 2 a week. What's worse is that it appeared that Jenny was the one doing all these returns. They seemed to think that Jenny was taking all she could before she retired. That is, until I told the DM about filling in for Jenny. Apparently, a very large $750 credit card transaction had been returned that night around 7 p.m., and Jenny's code was the one used. When I said she wasn't even there, in my naive way, I had saved her. It turns out that Jenny had just given Steve her register code to train him because it took a few days for him to get his own because of some computer glitch at corporate. After my offhand remark, they took a closer look at our old schedule on paper. The management team didn't clock in and out and realized that half these returns were happening on days when Jenny wasn't even there. So they switched Steve to the store in the other city, which had a better surveillance system, and caught him using another employee's code to pull the same trick, as well as flat out pulling cash from the till. I'm not sure what the actual charges were, but from what I heard, he was very startled when he showed up to work to find the district manager and 2 sheriff detectives waiting in the other store's office for him. He was literally perp-walked out in handcuffs. I was so upset that they didn't do it in our store. Jenny ended up leaving shortly after. The stress was just too much for her. Nick was made temporary manager, and he and I split opening and closing duties for a couple months. I mostly opened, and he would close. There were a few managers from around that would sub in to give us days off. Then we finally got a new manager who'd been entirely trained at other stores. He was okay, but he was no Jenny. Thankfully, he was no Steve either. So glad Steve got caught, and it's awesome that you managed to help Jenny out just by being yourself. This was a great story. Thanks for sharing. And our second story. I'm not a member of the HOA, and you won't like the result. I never thought I'd be posting on r/ProRevenge, but this story's too juicy to bury under a layer of beach sand. My name is Maxim, 37 years old, a former merchant sailor, and now the owner of a small private resort on the Atlantic coast. My plot is narrow, just 100 meters of beachfront and a private road through the dunes, but I invested like a pro. Hired a full-service staff, built a stylish bar called Blue Tide, a small restaurant named Fresh Catch, and a paid pier for fishing boats. The cleanliness, sterile. You'd have a hard time finding a stray grain of sand, let alone trash. Across the road sits a cottage community called Green Wave, run by an HOA led by none other than Karen. Paddington on paper, but Payneton by nature. Rumor had it her brother, Leto, used to run a gang called the Beltway Crew before getting life in prison for extortion and a string of home and jewelry store robberies. Karen wore that like a badge of honor. We're a strong family. We get things done. And now she wanted to get things done with my beach. The first incursion came on a Saturday in summer. I was on the porch with an iced tea admiring the tide when a golf cart rolled up. Out stepped Karen in her signature HOA baseball cap. Without so much as a greeting, she shoved a document in my face. Maxim, the Homeowners Association has decided beach access in our zone must be free. Residents are sick of walking 20 minutes to the public beach. It's an outrage. Karen, are you aware the road to the beach is my private property? I replied calmly, black and white on the deed. Maybe for now, she sneered, but we can file for an easement with the city. You have one chance. Give us the keys for free today. I smiled and gave her an old sailor's phrase, whistle when the icebergs arrive, and shut the door in her face. You should have seen her jaw drop. 1 week later, the fun began. Health inspectors came, checking cocktail ice quality. Then the fire department, complain about no sprinklers over palm trees. Then environmentalists with a recorder. Generator noise disrupts seabird mating rituals. They all left empty-handed. I've kept every permit in perfect order since my captain days. Karen was fuming, but played the long game. Weaponized bureaucracy. By August, the police got involved. 2 officers showed up just as oysters were being served on the pier. The senior one had a report in hand. We received a tip you're serving alcohol to minors. I pulled out a thick folder from the safe, licenses, sales logs, CCTV footage. 15 minutes later, the officer sighed. Apologies for the inconvenience, Maxim. We were just doing our job. This rinse-repeat cycle continued until late September, when a real storm hit. Around 1:47 a.m., my cameras caught someone climbing the fence, reaching the emergency ladder on the bar, and scaling the roof. A second later, crash. The roof gave way, and our mystery guest dropped straight into the kitchen. The morning tech turned on the lights, and there he was, a young man groaning under the vent with a busted leg and a crushed crate of limes nearby. Dude, who are you? Help, I'm Dan, Karen's son. Paramedics arrived fast. Double fracture, full leg cast. Police came with them. I handed over the footage. The officer watched and whistled. Breaking and entering, vandalism, endangering staff. They cuffed Dan right over the hospital blanket. You're under arrest, sir, even if you're on crutches. Karen stormed into the clinic an hour later. Face crimson, eyes wild. Maxim, how dare you drag my baby to jail? He was just walking around, and you set a trap. I handed her print stills, frame by frame. Dan breaking the garage lock, finding the ladder, prying the vent open. Your little stroller, I said, also destroyed $5,000 worth of kitchen equipment. Even if you somehow convince a judge to ignore the break-in, I'm filing a civil suit. The next day, Karen tried to play the family of tough guys card. A black SUV pulled up, and out came a beefy dude in a leather jacket claiming to be Chad's second cousin. His pitch was simple. Maybe we can settle this quietly. I invited them into the banquet hall, where two of my attorneys and a police officer, enjoying coffee, were already waiting. Mr. Cousin got the hint and vanished faster than the tide. Meanwhile, the press caught wind. Son of HOA leader arrested for breaking into local resort. One paper ran a still of Dan dangling from the ceiling with a spray can beneath him. Apparently he was going to tag free access on the bar. Karen became a local punchline. Even HOA members started calling. Why are our dues funding your son's lawyers? Again. By October, Karen's attorney reached out with a settlement offer. We met at a notary's office. She tried to save face. 100,000's excessive, Maxim. Dan made a mistake, sure, but... A mistake? My lawyer cut in. Let's review the charges. Theft, property damage, attempted extortion, and don't forget your bogus inspections. We had to cancel 2 corporate events with 60 guests each. Damages easily hit $150K. Karen turned purple and hissed, Fine, I'll get the money, but you have to drop the charges. I will, I said, on 3 conditions. 1, full compensation, $150K paid immediately. 2, a written public apology posted on the HOA website and in the local paper. 3, the HOA formally renounces any attempt to seize beach access and agrees never to interfere with my property again. Otherwise, we go to court, and believe me, I will dig into your cousins at City Hall. She looked at me like I'd asked her to sell her last crate of lemons, but she nodded. Dan, sitting nearby on crutches, just whispered, Mom, just sign it. The notary sealed the deal. The money arrived the next day. Rumor was Karen sold her yacht. That Friday, the front page read, HOA chair apologizes to resort owner, admits wrongdoing. Locals laughed. Those kinds of headlines usually follow bribery scandals, not beach drama. But the best moment? That night, I walked out to the bar. Guests were munching shrimp under surf rock. Karen rolled up with her entourage. She stepped onto the stage, took the mic, and, visibly shaking, read the exact 3-sentence statement we had written. I, Karen Paddington, acknowledge that our HOA violated the rights of a private landowner. I apologize to Maxim and his staff for the damages caused. Green Wave HOA will no longer pursue access to his beach. The applause was louder than the surf. Someone even shouted, Hey Karen, maybe your brother can send a support letter from prison. She turned beet red and fled the scene. I raised my pina colada. To honest business and strong fences. It's been a year and a half since then. The beach is thriving. We added Friday night musicians and outdoor movie screenings. The HOA has gone silent. Word is Karen's trying to get reelected, but even her allies whisper, just please don't mess with Maxim again. And Dan got probation. Now he's doing 100 hours of community service. Guess where? The public beach, picking up cigarette butts. I sometimes spot him from a distance, casting longing glances at my private pier, sighing as he rakes the sand. Karma, like the tide, always comes back around, especially for those who try to steal your sea. Respect private property. Boundaries and laws exist for a reason. If you try to steal someone's beach, don't be surprised when you end up finding your morals under a cast, sweeping the public shore. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.